Okay, and we are live.
Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Drake, Chair of the Nantucket Airport Commission, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. There are a few of the participants who have not yet joined us, but they will. I will mention their names at the beginning and introduce them as they come in. Excuse me, just one housekeeping item. I see Mina Macarius is in as an attendee, not as a panelist. Katie, could you make sure he has the link to come in as a panelist?
Yes.
And Arthur Gasparo is too.
Andrew, can you resend those links to those emails?
Just did.
Okay.
And Gerard from DEP also, I believe.
Correct. Yep. Gerard Martin.
Okay, they are sent.
Thank you. I'll start again. Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Drake, Chair of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. I'm calling the July 29th Airport Commission meeting to order. We are missing a few of the participants, and some of them are in the wrong room, so we'll get them moved over. But when we get to them, I will introduce them. I'm calling the meeting to order. The agenda is this, the entire agenda for this meeting is the public information session on the PFAS situation. And I would ask the commissioners whether the agenda is in agreement, they're in agreement with the agenda. Ms. Planzer?
Yes.
Mr. Buscarin?
Yes.
And I say yes. And Mr. Gasparo, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. We're using Zoom webinar for this meeting, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting, but it will also be posted on the screen here in a few minutes. People registering to be an attendee must use their full names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode, and when the public comment and question period comes along, they can click to the raised hand button if they choose to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hand in the order in which they are raised. If you do not have an audio capable device, you can use if you do not have an audio capable device, you can use a call-in number. We will not be using the YouTube chat function. All questions should be directed through the chair. I want to confirm member access. As a preliminary matter, I would like to confirm that the commission members and people anticipated to speak on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Arthur Gasparo,
Here.
Anthony Buscarin,
Here.
Andrea Planzer,
Here.
and Ms. Topham has not yet joined the meeting. Airport staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tom Rafter, Airport Manager.
Here.
Noah Carber, Assistant Airport Manager.
Here.
Katie Perales,
Here.
Lily Sylvia.
Here.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative when I call your name. Millie Garcia Serrano, the Regional Director for the Southeast Region of the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection.
Present.
Thank you. Gerard Martin, Deputy Regional Director of the Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup in the Southeast Region of Mass DEP. Would you turn off your mic and say you're here, please? I mean, turn off your.
Sorry about that. Here.
Thank you. Angela Gallagher, Mass DEP Project Manager for Nantucket Airport.
Here.
Thank you. Mina Macarius from Anderson and Krieger, Airport Legal Counsel.
Present, thank you.
Rich Lasden, McFarland Johnson Inc., who's the airport engineering consultant.
Here.
Jim Sukup of Weston Solutions Inc., environmental consultant and the LSP or licensed site professional for this project.
Present.
And Lisa Kramer, also of Weston Solutions. Lisa Kammer, excuse me, also of Weston Solutions.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Rafter, would you put up share your screen for the information about how to become an attendee at this meeting, please? And I'll continue talking. We'll leave it up for a few minutes so that you all can write it down if you need to. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the coronavirus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, as long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. We do also allow public participation, as outlined previously, using the Zoom webinar, and the information is currently on the screen. For this meeting, the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar app and broadcasting on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The ground rules for the business meeting are that I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members of the commission, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members of the commission wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, any vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Before we begin, I'd just like to make a brief comment about the announcements that the airport has made. We thought it best not to make a general announcement about the PFAS situation until we had some specific answers as to how the airport and its consultants are going to address the rapidly evolving situation. Given that the apparent health risk from PFAS is from long-term exposure, because of the uncertainty of the situation, and to avoid a suggestion that particular homes had contamination without that being confirmed, we delayed any public announcement for a few weeks, or delaying any public announcement for a few weeks seemed a reasonable approach. We realize that some of you may disagree, and we certainly understand your position. This public information session is intended to update you on what has been going on and to reinforce our commitment to get answers to you as soon as they are available. Thank you, and thank you for your participation and attendance. I am first going to turn the meeting over to Millie Garcia Serrano, Regional Director of the Southeast Region of the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, for a few comments. Ms. Garcia Serrano.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Drake and Mr. Rafter, for the opportunity to participate in today's very important public information session that you're holding via public meeting. We appreciate all the efforts, especially during this COVID-19 global pandemic. I know it's been very trying and hard, so we appreciate every single effort that you and your community is making to ensure that there's transparency and discussion about this topic that is very important. I also want to thank you very much for the significant amount of work that has been performed to date. Mass DEP continues to join in many states across the nation and territories with regards to the topic of emerging contaminants, and particularly PFAS, perfluorinated compounds. PFAS has really garnered a lot of attention in recent years, given the body of scientific information that exists as of today and continues to accumulate. A lot of scientific work is going on right now, and clearly a lot of developments are taking place right now as we aim to understand the health effects of PFAS and their potential to pose risk to human health and the environment. At Mass DEP, and I think I speak for other colleagues across the nation, we often coordinate Mass DEP with other states. There is a lot more to be learned about PFAS, but as a department, we believe that we have enough information to support rulemaking in various DEP programs across the board. For example, in December 2019, Mass DEP promulgated groundwater and soil cleanup standards that are applicable at hazardous waste sites across the Commonwealth. Next, in January 2020, DEP amended our Office of Research and Standards guideline for drinking water from 70 to 20 nanograms per liter for the sum of 6 PFAS. And as of today, Mass DEP continues to be on track with regards to promulgating a brand new Massachusetts Maximum Contaminant Limit, MMCL, drinking water standard, also of 20 nanograms per liter. And we are hopeful that we will be able to promulgate this MCL by the end of the year. So much of what is going to be discussed tonight really focuses on the ongoing response actions to abate or eliminate the presence of PFAS in private well water. While the work is currently being performed by the airport and its LSP, Mass DEP has also identified a technical support team consisting of Gerard Martin, Deputy Regional Director for the Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup in the Southeast region, as well as Ms. Angela Gallagher, who's a project manager devoted to this site. We thank you for the opportunity, truthfully, to join in the conversation today and support this conversation. We want to be an additional source and resource to the project team, and of course, not just the project team, but also the community and all interested parties. And as such, I thank you for the opportunity to be here to listen, and we look forward to your very important input tonight. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Garcia Serrano. We are appreciative of the support you've given the airport and look forward to continuing to work with you and your colleagues. I would note that Commissioner Jeanette Topham has joined. Ms. Topham, would you please confirm that that's you that we see on the screen by unmuting and saying present?
It is.
Thank you. All right, I am going to turn the program over to Tom Rafter, the airport manager. Tom?
Thank you, Dan. Give me 1 second. I just want to share the screen here so everybody can see the presentation. Again, my name is Tom Rafter. I'm the airport manager, and I'd just like to point out again one more time, the website is ack-pfas.com. You can find this presentation there. You can register to speak at this event, as well as find all the other public documents and everything else that you need to know about PFAS there. So I just wanted to point that out. That's ack-pfas.com. I'm going to also, I'll be giving this presentation, but I'll be the first to tell you that I have many, many years, over 40 years of experience in airports, and I can tell you just about anything in airports, but when it comes to some of these technical matters, I'm going to look to some of our experts if there are questions and things that I don't have the answer for. So tonight, what we'd like to do is go through what AFFF, or aqueous film forming foam, it's a foam that we use at the airport, and PFAS, the background and project timelines, as well as the airport's response actions, go over what a point of entry treatment system is and what we've been doing with those, go into some project details and the current status, and looking forward, what we're going to be doing as next steps, and also identify the project team, and then we'll be taking any questions or comments. So with that, we'll jump right into it. Aqueous film forming foam, as I said, we refer to as AFFF, and per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, that's why we call it PFAS. A little background on that. The use of foam containing PFAS has been required by the FAA for over 30 years at commercial service airports. Per the FAA requirements, the foam has been used in training exercises to prepare for airport emergencies and also in airport certification inspections. PFAS compounds are man-made chemicals that have been in use in a variety of products since the 1930s. Nantucket Airport is not unique. There's approximately 500 FAA to use foam. However, I would venture to guess there are not many that have or is in close proximity to private wells as we are. Many of them are in a metropolitan area. The general characteristics of PFAS compounds, they're persistent in the environment. They are water soluble and mobile in groundwater. And the scientific understanding and regulatory actions are continuing to evolve. Per the Mass DEP fact sheet, which is attached at the back of this presentation, studies of the 6 PFAS compounds in lab animals and studies of exposed people indicate some PFAS compounds are toxic with high concentrations and/or long-term exposures. And there's a list of some of the potential health impacts there: developmental effects in fetuses, possible effects on the thyroid, liver, kidney, hormone levels, and immune system. And cancer risk may exist in people exposed to levels above the EPA lifetime drinking water health advisory of 70 parts per trillion. So PFAS comes in many, many sources, and it's in industrial and commercial property use, military, dry cleaners, car washes, industrial manufacturing. It's in multiple household consumer products, from anything that's stain resistant, water resistant, non-stick products, the Teflon that you may have in your cookware, polishes, cleaning products, shampoos, bug insect repellents, food packaging, microwave popcorn, dental floss, and much to my dismay, I found that there's a high concentration in chocolate cake as well. It's also in the AFFF, the foam that we use for firefighting purposes at the airport. And it's actually been required since about 1989. So on the regulatory timeframe, May of 2016, US EPA issued a health advisory I think it may have been mentioned earlier, citing a lifetime risk of 70 parts per trillionth for drinking water, covering 2 PFAS compounds. Currently, there's no other EPA federal standard for drinking water, only this advisory. And in 2018, as was mentioned, Mass DEP came out with a guideline to 70 parts per trillionth for a combination of 5 PFAS compounds. And then later in January of 19, announced its intention to initiate the process to develop drinking water standards for a group of PFAS compounds. And then just after Christmas in 2019, adopted revisions to the Mass drinking water regulations for PFAS, where the standard is now 20 parts per trillionth for the sum of the concentration of 6 PFAS compounds. This is our project timeline, and I'd like to just go through this. On the right, you'll see a picture of what's monitoring well on the airport. March 11th, Mass DEP issued a request for information to the airport, very voluminous. We returned that back to them on April 2nd, identifying the past and current use of foam and where it was dispensed. December 6th of 19, DEP issued what's called a NOR, or Notice of Response Action. And then December 21 of 19, we sent out agreements to begin the process of testing the Mattox-Sham Valley Road homes. We sent what are called access agreements. Many of the community members are familiar with those. December 27th, 19, as we mentioned just a minute ago, the standard for 20 parts per trillionth was established by Mass DEP. February 14th, the groundwater testing of airport wells and what's known as the Thompson House, it's an airport-owned home at the end of the runway, took place. And then on March 3rd, Mass DEP was informed of the airport's property test results. Also around that time, many of you remember, this is when the pandemic was kicking in, so it got a little bit crazy there for a bit. April 29th, the IRA, or Immediate Response Action Plan, was submitted to Mass DEP, and these documents are all available on the website. May 6, 2020, Mattox-Sham Valley Road testing began, as well as the installation of the POET system in the Thompson House. And a POET system is a point of entry treatment system. Between June 10th and 12th, 3 more POET systems were installed along Mattox-Sham Valley Road. On July 14th, our commission authorized a task order for testing of residences west of the airport and continued work on Mattox-Sham Valley Road. July 20th, the west side residence testing began. And on July 22nd and 23rd, 2 more POET systems were installed on Mattox-Sham Valley Road. Some are response actions that were required by Mass DEP to take if we have results greater than non-detect up to 20 parts per trillionth. The response that's required is a verbal or electronic notification to the homeowner, provide bottled water, no treatment, and follow up by quarterly monitoring. For results greater than 20 parts per trillionth up to 200 parts per trillionth, a verbal or electronic notification to homeowners required, providing bottled water, and design and install a treatment system. For results greater than 200 parts per trillionth, it is deemed an imminent health hazard by Mass DEP. The response requires verbal and electronic notification to the homeowner, providing bottled water, and installation of a treatment system on an expedited basis, which we have worked with various departments in the state to expedite those. A point of entry treatment system, for those of you who are not familiar, they're designed and installed by the airport consultants. They're redundant, as you can see in the picture. You have 2 tanks there to ensure the system protection. Each design is unique to every home. Initial monthly testing occurs for the efficacy of the system, and then it is quarterly thereafter. And provision of bottled water is supplied until we can confirm the removal of PFAS. This is a map, and I don't know how it's coming across on the screens, but it is available, as I say, on the website. What this is identifying is the areas where we dispersed foam over the years, the monitoring wells that are on the airport, and the water flow that we know of right now. I'm not sure if I my cursor's not coming across, but the red dots are the areas where foam was dispersed for various training evolutions. There are 4 blue circles with white dots, and they are the monitoring wells throughout the airport. I will say that the contours and the flow of the groundwater, this is based on the information we currently have. We have instructed our consultants to move forward with updating this to verify its accuracy. This is a list that is compatible with that previous map. It indicates the date range and the frequency and the total estimated gallons that were dispersed for the various areas. So over the course of about, I think it was 15 years or so, let me see here. Give me 1 second.
30 years, Tom.
About 30 years, we dispensed about between 1,900 and 2,500 gallons of foam, or on average between 65 to 87 gallons per year. And this again is taken from the information that is available on the website. So the current status on Mattoxan, and I'm going to quote this, but I think there may have been 1 or 2 updates because things are happening fast and furious here. Mattoxan Valley Road, there's 22 parcels total, 19 tested, 1 pending, and 2 non-responsive. That, like I say, may have changed because access agreements are coming in all the time. This week we had 2, 1 from Mattoxan Valley, 1 from the west. There were 5 results over 200 parts per trillion, 3 between 20 parts and 200 parts per trillion. 4 were below the 20 part per trillionth level. 3 were non-detect, and 4 results are still pending. 6 treatment systems have been installed and 2 are pending, and 14 residents are on bottled water, and testing is ongoing. For the properties to the west of the airport, and on the attached graphic, you can see the outline in a kind of orange mustard color. It shows the parcels there. We have 22 parcels listed, but it's a little bit challenging reconciling the official records with what actually is existing in the field. Weston has been out and done a great job and continues to do so. There's 20 confirmed wells, 20 access agreements were received, and 20 of them were tested. The initial results are expected about August 7th, and testing will continue. And as I said, we just recently got another access agreement in this week, so things are moving. Moving forward, we understand the critical nature of this, and we are supported by a number of groups, especially including DEP, the team itself. But we're going to continue to obtain access agreements for the remaining properties on Mattoxan Valley Road, complete testing and notifying the homeowners, complete the treatment system installations, continue testing to determine system maintenance schedule and to monitor homes without treatment systems, and winterize and activate the systems on a seasonal basis. For the properties west of the airport, same protocol as Mattoxan Valley Road testing and treatment. If results are at or above 20 parts per trillion, adjacent parcels will need to be sampled, and possible follow-up testing for homes without treatment systems may be necessary. Other next steps, continuing testing and analysis, investigating nature and the extent of the groundwater impact, identifying the plume, ensuring funding to expedite the process. And I have to say, the Airport Commission requested and the Select Board declared an emergency last week in order to try to expedite the funding. The town manager, Libby Gibson, and finance director, Brian Turbot, were very helpful. They petitioned the Department of Revenue for approval to expend beyond the appropriation for $3.5 million. And just this morning, we received that, so that was great news. And as I say, it's moving rapidly. Continued public outreach and communication between this meeting, the website, and we'll have open communication throughout the entire process. The big thing I'm very pleased to announce that we're moving rapidly with is working with Wannacomet Water Company to provide the town water to the affected properties. It may be difficult to see on the map, but essentially it's coming down off of Manhasset just by the fire station, continuing down to about the end of our aircraft parking area, comes onto the airport, follows our perimeter, cuts across the approach of runway 6, and then down Maddox-Sham Valley Road. The water company had a crew out there doing some survey work today. Our engineers have begun the design process. They're working with the water company. Water company's providing them CAD drawings. Our attorney is working on drafting the agreement between the Airport Commission and Wannacomet Water. And we're doing whatever we can to try to expedite that process, because we know that is the long-term, or and I shouldn't say long-term, but that's the ultimate fix at this point in time. And the team, as was mentioned earlier, is the airport. I am the presenter, but the man with the knowledge is Noah Carberg. He is a scientist. His information is on the slide there. McFarland Johnson, Rich Lasden, it's been a great help. Weston Solutions with Jim and Lisa are present tonight. And again, any public questions, please raise your hand. Use the raise your hand function to ask the questions, provide a comment, and you'll be called upon in order. If you don't get your question addressed or have any comments after this meeting, please submit the questions or comments to Noah at ncarberg@nantucketairport.com. And you can use the website again to contact us, and that is www.ack-pfas.com. And it does not have to be all capitals. I tried that today. And again, just a reminder on how to register to ask questions. The next slide, I don't want to get into too much. It's the handout, the fact sheet from DEP, and it's not a reading test, but it's there if you'd like to download it. It is on the website. And with that, I will turn it back over to Dan. Do you want me to leave this up, or?
No, I may ask you, if it's relevant, I may ask you to put one of the pages up when you get to it. But if, is the fact sheet on there?
It is. That's why I was saying it's a bit of a.
It's hard to read, but we might just stick it up for a minute if you can.
Okay, let me see here. Yeah, it's a bit of an eye test. It's 4 pages too, but there is a lot of helpful information, a lot of good links in there. And I would encourage everybody to go to the website, pull this up, and again, you have the easy links to it.
Thank you, Tom, very much for that for your presentation. Before we go to the attendees for their comments and questions, I'm going to ask the commissioners specifically whether they have anything they want to say. Ms. Planzer?
Not yet.
Mr. Buscarin?
Nothing. Thank you, Dan.
Ms. Topham?
No, sir.
Mr. Gasparo?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to the questions, and I'm told that the way they show up on my screen is in order which people raise their hand. So the first person who we will hear from is Liz Shannon. If you would, when the mic is turned on, if you would address, tell us your name and identify yourself, and then make your comment or ask your questions.
Good evening, Liz Shannon. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for entertaining my question. First, I'll make a comment and begin with a little more positive, saying that I applaud your efforts, the town and the airport's efforts in abating the water situation, but I'd like to take it a little step further and ask you some questions about the human factor. Specifically, when will the airport begin to test for PFAS levels in their current and former employees?
I'm going to ask Mr. Sukup to address that as to whether it's something that happens in these situations. Frankly, it's not something we've discussed, but Jim, if you could talk about that, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's as Dan mentioned, it's something that we have not considered to this point. With regard to the requirements of the Mass DEP under the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, the MCP. We haven't talked about that, but that's the governing law for this situation. Those regulations focus on environmental concerns, so groundwater and soil and air for the most part. Does not really impact the human testing. So that's something that we're going to have to consider. And I don't know if anyone from Mass DEP wants to weigh in on that.
Ms. Garcia Serrano, do you have a comment?
So my comment would be that my first step often is to encourage concerned citizens with regards to any personal health effects to consult their primary care physician. Also, the Department of Public Health is very much engaged in the PFAS conversation. We have intra DEP, DPH meetings to coordinate our efforts. So, Ms. Shannon, I would be more than happy to take your name and definitely put you in touch with a representative of the Department of Public Health. And in addition, also, we may touch, I think that's one item that Mass DEP touches upon in the fact sheet. So akin to any other emerging contaminants, we encourage people to have a conversation with their primary care physician and further explore any kind of impacts. But it would be my pleasure to put you in touch and make sure that your question is satisfied.
Ms. Garcia Serrano, has there been any, are you aware of any testing of individuals who've been done who are working in areas of discharge but have neither drunk the water nor bathed in it?
I believe that there's a study out in Westfield, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I believe that it was sponsored, was co-sponsored between DOD and the National Institutes of Health. And I think, again, that's information that I'm not intimately involved in, but I would be more than happy to produce any kind of final documents. But I believe that there was some kind of biological testing.
Thank you. Ms. Shannon, I'm not sure, that's not exactly the answer you wanted, but is it all right for now? And the airport will continue to follow it.
Well, yes, because I think the airport owns that testing, not a person to go to their PCP.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you very well.
Because I don't think it is the employee's responsibility to go to their PCP and request this. But I'm not going to get into that because in addition to the PFAS found in the AFFF firefighting foam, those employees are also exposed to PFAS in their structural gear, which they were given a few years ago. So that's fine. I'll continue to pursue it. And I would like to continue those discussions with public health. But let's switch gears to the civilians in this situation. What is being done for the people whose homes tested over 200 parts per trillion in terms of, again, I mean, I understand this is environmental, but we know, we've listened, I'm sure you all listened to Dr. Kuhn speak about how people can inhale this, especially when they're taking a hot shower in the steam. So again, I don't see this as just environmental, but are you going to, so I guess I would ask this, that there would be some education allowed and maybe some suggestions made. I mean, I saw someone post recently on social media that they're still using their bath water, even though they're waiting for their pellet system to be installed. And I think that's absolutely ludicrous on their part when their home tested over 200 parts per trillion. So I think that there needs to be some discussion. If I find it really difficult to believe there hasn't been, given that there are employees that have a cancer that is attributable to PFAS. And I think that the airport should definitely start considering this, and as well as the town. And I'll continue to talk to the Public Health Department, Mass Department of Public Health.
We will take up the issue as well.
Thank you. I have one other question.
Please.
I didn't really get to see the map very well. I am apologizing, Mr. Rafter, but were there only 5 locations marked on that map that where the airport allegedly used AFFF?
No, there are what, 8 or 10? They're about 10.
I apologize. Again, I couldn't necessarily see it.
There's also the chart that lists all the locations It's in the
Okay.
presentation.
All right, I'll refer back to that. At this time, I don't have any further questions about that then until I have better edification on my part. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Tom Sidiowski, who is here with us. He's the chairman of the Surfside Association. I don't know whether you're here on behalf of the association or personally, but Mr. Sidiowski, please go ahead.
Okay, hi, it's Tom Sidlowski. I'm a full-time resident on Pochick Avenue, and I'm also the president of the Surfside Association. I want to thank you guys for doing this. It's been very informative. And my basic question is, how will you notify the public when you get the results of the West Side tests? When you said August 7th, but how will we find out what the results are?
Well, certainly the homeowners, as we've said, will be notified directly. As far as other notifications, the results will be posted on the website. And I'm sure the paper will be all over us for that information as well.
Okay, we'll look for the website. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is Bruce Mandel. Bruce? Mr. Mandel? Sorry, I guess the next question is Andrew Mulcahy.
Oh, I didn't even realize I raised my hand. Thanks. I think I understand, but I work for Housing Nantucket, and we have a few properties that have been tested already. And there are some that don't directly abut the airport. So is my understanding right that if a property tests over 20 parts per trillion, then you would go to the adjoining properties? I just had some tenants asking, when they, if their properties would be tested, that's all.
Mr. Sullivan, do you want to address that? Jim, I'm sorry, Jim Suko.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, absolutely. That is the plan. The initial sampling that was conducted for the most part, I think last week, that we're waiting for the results on, is the first line of homes to the west of the airport. So we've collected those samples. We're waiting for those samples to come back. If any of those exceed the 20 action level, the Mass DEP action level, then we'll step out to the next home to the west, and potentially, depending on how the roads are aligned and how the properties are aligned, it could be a home to the north or to the south as well. But correct, it's kind of, if you think of it as a dropping a stone in a pond or a bucket, you get those rings that go out. That's what we will do. If we get an exceedance at a 20, that would be the stone, and we'll move out in all directions to the west to sample the next layer of homes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Bruce Mandel, did you have a question?
I'm sorry. Yes, I did. I'm sorry. I missed my chance. I have a few questions, and I'd like to.
We can't hear you very well. Can you maybe move a little closer to your mic or something?
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. I have a few comments and questions. I'd like to ask them, and then you can direct what participant might answer.
Frankly, Bruce, I'd rather take them one at a time if you don't mind.
Okay, fine. The first one is, I noticed on slide 9 of 19, there was a discussion or a comment about removal of the PFAS. And my question regarding that is, I understand PFAS is generally known as a forever toxin, and it's difficult, if impossible, to remove. And I understand the point, the POET systems attempt to address this. And I'd like to know how efficient they are versus perhaps an activated charcoal system that might actually capture some of these for the victims of this. So perhaps someone could address that, and then I'll go on to one or two other questions.
Mr. Lasden, do you want to take that? Unmute yourself, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I will start, and then I will pass it off to Lisa. So there is a variety of treatment systems to use for treating PFAS in homes. And because of the seasonal nature of these homes, the current system that we're using is a better system because of the seasonality of the homes. And if I can pass that off to Lisa.
Well, excuse me, may I jump in there, please?
Yeah.
Some of the, if some of the homes on the west side, which are used year round, are require a POET system, will they get the same system or a different one? Based on what you just said about seasonality.
So Lisa, can you share some information on that?
Sure. Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why we went with the systems we did on Matacasham. One is concentration, and the other, as Rich mentioned, is the seasonal nature of the homes. And, you know, assuming that we'll have a somewhat long-term or midterm maintenance period for these, the maintenance costs are anticipated to be less. So it's easier for us to handle when we're winterizing the wells or the systems and then opening them for the season. If any homes on the west side require a POET system, you know, again, we'll be looking at all of the information available, the status of the home on an annual basis, occupancy, concentration, the same evaluation will be done. And then we'll look at, you know, whether, you know, what's called a GAC system, a granular activated carbon system, or an ion exchange system, resin system would be used at those wells. As far as the removal, the mechanics of what happens in a GAC system and an ion exchange system are somewhat different, but effectively they're all absorbing the PFAS through the filters, and there's two filters that are plumbed in line. So we get the first filter gets the majority of everything, and then the second filter is like a backup. And those systems are designed that way to have sort of a fail-safe, and that's why they're monitored on a regular basis until we understand what the breakthrough rate is. So they are effective at removing PFAS from water before it gets to the point of entering the house through, you know, the plumbing through every faucet. I hope that answers your question.
Well, not quite, but my concern is that the POET systems are supposedly, and you'll help me out here because reading all this technical information is daunting, are not quite as effective. Are you saying that the POET systems remove the PFAS to a level that's safe, or does it remove them completely?
These remove them below detection, so to a level that is below the laboratory detection limit, so we can't see it. Because we are plumbing them in series and you have two filters, it should be able to remove as much of the PFAS as possible. We would not leave the system as is if the results coming out of that final filter are anything detectable.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. Thank you. The second question I have, and I commend the airport for taking this initiative, is that many of us on the island are concerned that this is not the only place where we have the exposure to PFAS. We're concerned that perhaps the sludge at the wastewater treatment plant has PFAS in it. And I'd like to know if our Mass DEP people are aware of any such concerns here or elsewhere. And if so, what we should be thinking about doing. It's especially alarming in light of a recent Johns Hopkins study that is linking PFAS to blood cancers. And of course, we're concerned about that. So I'd like to find out if any of the folks on this call are aware that the PFAS is isolated to these airport properties, or if this is an issue that we need to be looking at on a broader level.
I'll address that first, Bruce, Mr. Mandel, and then turn it over to Mr. Martin for his comments. But the town manager, Lisby Gibson, has appointed his name, help me, Tom, his name escapes me at the moment. Chuck Larson, who's an engineer, as the point person to do an examination of town properties, including the landfill and the wastewater treatment plant. to see what the impact of PFAS might be from those facilities. I believe it's just getting started. I don't have any further knowledge about what's going on there, but I thought that was worth mentioning. Mr. Martin, I don't know if you've heard anything about this or not.
I did hear a little bit about that this morning, which is good. I mean, to look into that. PFAS does fall into a group of contaminants that we refer to as contaminants of emerging concern. Relatively new. We're trying to figure out a lot of where it might be coming from and what it might be impacting. We've done a lot of work with our water supply division. They've worked with municipalities to test public water supplies for PFAS. So we already have a good handle on where public water supplies that may be impacted. And I don't believe the Nantucket public water supplies are. And we are starting to look at these other sources like the landfills and see what they might be contributing to PFAS in the environment.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I guess my last question is on these POET systems. It appears what you're saying is they're capable of filtering out these PFAS chemicals and protecting the occupants and protecting their drinking water. What happens to the PFAS chemicals that are collected in these filters? How are they disposed of safely?
Mr. Sokop, do you want to address that?
Yeah, certainly. Or I can default to Lisa as well. But yeah, so as Lisa mentioned, we've got 2 carbon or resin canisters that are in series. So the contaminated water comes from your well. It goes to the first one, where, as Lisa mentioned, most of it, if not all of it, is absorbed by the material in that one. And then it goes into the second one, which is we call the polishing step, which if there's any molecules that got through the first one, it gets caught in the second one. And we test regularly the influent water, and then between the tanks, and then after the second tank, so the water that's going to your faucet. And we keep track of all that. And so we can tell, and Lisa mentioned the term breakthrough, which is when we see contamination getting through the first canister and then getting through the second canister. And so we keep track of that, and we can map the influent concentrations and determine from that how quickly or how often the canisters need to be changed. So typically what we'll do is, once we get breakthrough of the first canister, so in other words, we start to see it going in between canister 1 and canister 2, is we'll move what is the second canister up to the first position, and then we bring a brand new canister in for the second one. That is now going to your home for that polishing step. So we call them the lead and the lag. So the lead tank goes off site. So to answer your question directly, what we do is we then take that carbon out of that tank, either if it's a carbon system, as you mentioned, I think you mentioned activated carbon. That's one of the ones we use. The ones on Matacasham Valley Road, we've been using the resin because, again, as Lisa mentioned, the higher concentrations and the seasonality. It's not good to shut down a carbon system for the winter and then reactivate it in the spring, because you can get bacteria and stuff that like to grow on carbon. So you really don't want to do that. Whereas the resin systems, you can do that. You can drain them and let them just be non-active over the winter, and then turn them back on in the spring. So it's better for that. But so what we do is we take the material, either the resin or the carbon, out of those, and then that is shipped to a disposal facility that's licensed to handle these types of materials. And there are different types of disposal facilities for these forever compounds. In some cases, it's incinerated. In some cases, it's there are other treatments that they can use to actually destroy the compounds.
Oh, thank you for that explanation. It sounds as though that these...
You need to speak up again, Mr. Mandel.
Excuse me?
You need to speak up again.
I'm sorry. So it's my understanding that these vessels that collect the PFAS are not going to be disposed of. The material is not going to be disposed of on island. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yep, goes off island. Yeah, there was no licensed facility on the island to handle this material.
That it, Mr. Mandel?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The next commenter or questioner is Emily Molden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drake. Emily Molden here for the Nantucket Land Council. I just wanted to thank the airport and the Airport Commission for holding this presentation and giving everyone an opportunity to learn a little bit more and speak, and also for making all of your reports and the data that you have collected to date available on your website. That's been very helpful. We have been reviewing all of the reports and the information, and we'll continue to do so as it becomes available. I am very supportive of the airport's further movement towards identifying the extent of the contamination plume and also further detailing the groundwater flow on site and adjacent to the site, as was discussed in the presentation. I hope that through those additional hydrological investigations and exploration of the extent of that plume, that one component that will be considered based on the results of those additional investigations would be plans for ongoing monitoring into the future of how that contamination is moving as it slowly makes its way through the watershed, presumably towards the ocean. And I'm sure that's something that will be discussed later on as some more data is collected. And then just one question that is perhaps more for some of the DEP representatives. I'm just wondering what the best resource is. I know there's a lot of great information on Mass DEP's website regarding PFAS in general, but for citizens or residents who are not likely to be included in the sampling or testing that's performed by the airport, who are interested in having that work done themselves at their properties and their homes, what is the best resource of information to find consultants and labs that can help them to do that properly?
Mr. Martin, do you want to take that? You need to unmute.
That's a good question. I think, you know, the best resource is probably kind of embarrassing, but often Google gets you a lot of good information. Google environmental labs in the area. You want to make sure that they are able to do the PFAS analysis if they do choose to use a lab. Obviously, our website has a lot of good information on just PFAS and what it is and what it can be found in and whatnot. If folks do sample their private wells and they're impacted, they probably want to let the Board of Health and probably us know what the results are, so we can look into that. The state is actually doing kind of a statewide random private well sampling program right now to get an idea. As you can tell by the presentation that was made tonight, PFAS is in a lot of compounds that we all use. It's in clothing that, if you're a hiker and you have your Gore-Tex jacket, it's in that. Then you wash your Gore-Tex jacket, now that rinse water is going into your septic system. There's been studies that have been done by Silent Springs on the Cape, sampling private wells to see what kind of concentrations we're seeing from PFAS, possibly from septic systems. And there are some low levels, usually around 5 lower, so well below our drinking water standard. That may not be attributable to waste sites and therefore could be from septic systems. And the work that we're doing statewide to get a better idea will give us much more information as to what we would call anthropogenic background may be for PFAS in the environment. To be honest with you, it's in a lot of compounds, it's in a lot of things we use, and it doesn't break down very readily. We've seen some studies in Vermont, and actually around the Boswell Airport, where they found what we are considering background levels of PFAS in the soil, probably from deposition from the air, from past burning of trash and things like that. And it had a completely different signature than the PFAS we were seeing at the airport itself, Boswell Airport. So it's a brand new issue that we're dealing with. So every day it seems like we get more and more information. But I would check, Google for environmental labs and just make sure that they're qualified to do the PFAS analysis. But it does get a little tricky because there are so many potential sources.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Molden?
No, I think that's great. I appreciate hearing a little bit more about the study that DEP has planned for sampling some more residential wells across the state. I had just heard about that and look forward to seeing more information on it. I know that your website also lists some specific laboratories that have been registered with DEP. I know you guys are still working on a specific certification process for labs to do this testing, but that there are some that you have already been in touch with regarding the type of analysis that they're using to ensure that it's appropriate.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Megan Perry is the next person in line.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. Some might be for DEP, some might be for the airport. How would you like me to ask? Just start with
one at a time.
Okay, fantastic. Well, this one, I think while DEP is here, I'll ask this. I know the municipal water was tested in 2013 for PFAS. Since then, the new standards have come out. Is there any reason to retest the municipal water source on island? Just because from 2013 to now seems like there may or may not be changes.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Martin?
Thanks. That is a different program, but we have been doing a lot of, working with water supplies across the state to retest since the 2013. The 2013 was the testing that was kind of done to get this whole thing started when it was identified as a contaminant of emerging concerns. Angela, do you know if Nantucket their water supply has been tested recently?
It has not for PFAS. I did check on that today.
Okay.
Yeah, the detection limits back when they did it in 2013, some of them reached what we have for standards now. And they were all non-detect. But again, that was comparing to the 70 parts per trillion at the time.
So one of the things I can do, Ms. Perry, is we actually have weekly PFAS calls between the 3 bureaus in the Southeast region. Actually, all the regions do this in preparation for a weekly call with the commissioner. So this is something that's really in the forefront and dealing with us. And that our weekly call happens to be tomorrow morning. So I can raise your question with the Deputy Regional Director for the bureau that oversees our water supply and see what they can do to help you out.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Just to clarify, the results from 2013 would be detectable by current standards?
I think the detection limits were a little higher back then, right, Angela?
Yes, the detection limits were higher for, I think, most of the contaminants that they were testing for. A few of them did meet our current standards, but those were ND.
Okay. This might be a follow-up to that. With an increase in demand for water or wells on a single source aquifer, is there potentially any cause for concern that the plume might move?
That is a good question. And one of the things that our water supply folks do when overseeing wells is they develop what we call a zone 2. And that's the area of the aquifer that contributes water to that water supply. And the parameters that are used to develop the zone 2 are extremely conservative. It's based on 180 days of no rainfall. And I can't remember the last time in Massachusetts we had 180 days with no rainfall. So no infiltration. So it's very conservative. And when we're looking at these sites, and Angela does a lot about this work, when we do have impacted public water supply wells or looking at potential impacts to public water supply wells, we look at what's in the zone 2 and to see if that has the potential to impact the well. So even if they were to over pump the well, which they're not allowed to under our program, but even with a tremendous amount of drought, the zone 2s that have been developed are pretty conservative and are a good tool to determine the water that's contributing to that well.
Mr. Sokup, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, I was going to follow up if that's okay. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, let me just ask him if Jim, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't. I think Gerard covered it very well. I think like you said, the water supply wells are controlled under the state regulations with regard to what they can pump and the studies that have to go into designing those wells, where those wells are going to be. So that's all been kind of vetted. There's a modeling that's done, groundwater modeling that's done to determine where that zone 2 is. Again, it's under very conservative conditions. So,
yeah. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Ms. Perry.
Sure. I'm sorry. This, I think, is another one for DEP while you guys are here. Would the water withdrawal permit come into play with those considerations?
Would the what come into play?
The water withdrawal permit that the town has for municipal water?
They have permitted how much they can pump from their municipal wells. They have an upset level that they can't go over.
Would it be of concern if they did go over it, even if just seasonally?
Again, given the conservative parameters that are used for developing the zone 2s, the zone of contribution to the well, I can't see that would be a big issue.
Okay. My next question, I think, is more towards the Airport Commission. Is there any talk of potentially signing on an MDL and looking into the chemical companies being held responsible? I know funding is a question in terms of moving forward on a lot of this. Is that something where
it's certainly being discussed?
Okay. Along with that, I believe it was in December of 2019, the House and Senate passed a multi-million-dollar funds to help with remediations. Do you know if that's anything that the airport or the town is able to sign on to?
I am not aware of anything. From our understanding, there's a state fund, but we're eligible for that. I don't know anything about the federal. If anybody else does, please chime in.
That was at the Mass Municipal, so I believe it was state level.
Yes, we've been told we are not eligible to participate in that.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Robert Orlandi is the next participant. Mr. Orlandi?
I can't hear. Okay, hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, you can, okay. I have a couple questions. Western Solutions people may be able to answer this.
Well, let me direct your question. Go ahead and answer that.
Okay, you can direct it. The first question is, I understand it's a very low level, 20 parts per billion is extremely low. And so I remember at the last Airport Commission gathering that you had, someone said that you have to be a licensed lab technician to grab a sample. Is that the status?
Jim, do you want to address that, or Lisa?
Yeah, I can address that. No, you do not need to be a licensed or have any type of special certification to collect the sample. Now, that being said, sampling for PFAS is very tricky. As we've talked about before, it comes in a variety of household uses. And I think Gerard mentioned earlier, Gore-Tex clothing. The types of field notebooks that we use often are treated so that you can write in the rain, right when they get wet. And a lot of those types of products have PFAS in them. So you have to be very careful, and certain protocols that we follow at Western Solutions that have been developed by the regulatory agencies to make sure that we're not cross-contaminating the sample. So it's actually pretty arduous. We have to take clothing. Generally, we try and use cotton clothing. It has to be washed at least 6 times in a washing machine with no special detergents that don't have PFAS in them. You can't use fabric softener. So there's and that, this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. There's all of these types of things that we have to do to make sure that like, because you said it's actually, I think you said 20 parts per billion. It's actually 20 parts per trillion. So it's even.
I meant trillion, you're right.
Yeah, it's even 1,000 times less than that.
Yeah,
so we're talking about extremely low concentration. So you really do need someone who's skilled and trained in collecting the samples to collect them. Otherwise, you do risk cross contamination, and then you get a result, and then you're not sure what that means. Is that really what's in my water, or is that some sort of artifact of the sampling?
Right. So let me give you a little follow-up, okay? I have a crawl space in my home. So I understand what you're talking about with the POET system. There are cubic foot size filter, and there's 2 of them. So somebody's grabbing samples before, after, and after the polishing filter. And are you in a crawl space? I mean, is this a possible scenario for a POET filter?
It is, as I think Tom mentioned when he was going through his presentation. Each one of these systems is customized to the home, and it depends on a variety of factors. One is where the water comes into the home, what the concentration is. The higher the concentration, the more likely we would go with a resin type based system. Lower concentrations, and carbon seems to work well with the lower concentrations, as long as we don't have that seasonal issue that we talked about before, and trying to drain them. But yeah, we have to look at each home, and there are different types of canisters. There are different manufacturers. Some are shorter, some are taller. But again, based on the concentration that you have coming in, the higher concentration, you need more what we call residence time. So the water has to be in the tank longer to allow it to absorb onto the media, be it a resin or a activated carbon. So the higher the concentration, the bigger tank you need. So these are all things that get taken into account as we design a system. But like we said, it is custom. We have installed several, I believe, on MVR that were in the crawl space. That was the best location. Others we have utilized like closets, closet space. So it is a house by house.
Yeah. Okay. And so if you do it in a crawl space, you got to go into the crawl space. Yep. You have to get samples.
Yep.
Who gets the samples?
We have technicians at Western Solutions so far that have been doing that work.
So you're saying you can provide a workable system. Say if you have 20 parts per trillion in your feed or something like that going to the filters, how long will a filter last roughly?
It's hard to say. It kind of depends on your water usage. If you have if you have a lot of teenagers in your house that are taking showers a lot, you tend to use more water. So it really depends on your usage, which is why when Lisa was talking earlier about our sampling, is once we put a POET in a home, we do sampling fairly frequently, typically monthly. And then we sample between the first tank and the second tank. We sample the water coming in between the 2 tanks and then the water going out. And by getting that data monthly, we can plot a curve, what we call a breakthrough curve, and see how long it takes for that tank, how often it needs to be replaced. And again, if you have higher concentrations or if you're using a lot of water, it'll need to be replaced more often. If you don't use a lot of water and you have lower concentrations, it may be a year, maybe once a year that you need to get it replaced. If you have a seasonal home, you may not have to have it replaced at all. It may be that we replace it at the end of the season, and one tank will get you through a whole summer season.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Liz Shannon, you had another question?
Do you need a spoon?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you for entertaining my other question. One quick one, I think this is probably an easy one. How do we obtain the contact information for tonight's participants?
I think you can work through Mr. Carberg. I don't think it's not, we haven't, we're not giving out everybody's contact information. I think the reason for that is we need to filter them and ask the right people. So if you address Mr. Carberg, he'll make sure it gets to the right person.
Okay, thank you. My other question is, Mr. Rafter, I apologize. I couldn't actually look at the timeline in its entirety very well. And so I was wondering, when did the airport replace the AFFF with PFAS with another product that doesn't have it?
We haven't done that. Well, I shouldn't say it. We removed from the fuel farm fire suppression system under a state program, PFAS containing foam. The state came and took that or had a hauler take it. The current firefighting, we are testing it through the utilization of a cart system, which recycles the foam back into the truck. So it does not require us to disperse it. Only in the case of emergency would we disperse foam into the environment.
The FAA, am I correct, Mr. Rafter, in saying the FAA has not changed the specifications for firefighting foam?
They have until, I believe it's next year to, well, the way it's written in the reauthorization language, it says to stop the use of the PFAS foam. They have developed a new test site down in Atlantic City where they're actually working on developing a PFAS-free foam.
Okay, so I understand you have a system to contain it, but what about the personnel using it even during the test? Has there been new PPE, or for those who don't know what that is, personal protective equipment given to these employees?
My understanding is that it's true, yes. There's been training on the utilization of the cart as well as the
You're breaking up, Mr. Rafter.
My understanding is that is correct, and they've been trained on how to utilize the cart, the ecological cart.
Sorry. What has been done to identify other sites where AFFF has been used on the island?
We haven't done anything at the airport to do that.
Okay, so then there's no one from the town that can speak to that?
Not in this panel, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up. We'll give just a moment for people to, Town Manager Libby Gibson has her hand up.
Hi, just wanted to mention with regard to the question just asked about what are we doing about the rest of the island. Last week, the Select Board executed a contract with CDM Smith to conduct an initial risk assessment to determine that issue.
Thank you, Libby. All right, I will, do you have anything else, Libby? No, you're done. Okay. I will ask the commissioners if they have any further comments that they'd like to make. Mr. Gasparo?
I would just add that we're, obviously concerned, all working together on this. I appreciate the efforts of everyone in the meeting tonight, and that we should let the public know the date and time of our next commission meeting, and that in the interim, there'll also be an Energy and Environment Subcommittee meeting, and we're working further to the consultants are working on scopes of services that the subcommittee will review and discuss and bring forth to the commission. That'll all be, related to the continued study of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Planzer?
I don't have any comments.
Ms. Topham?
I agree with Mr. Casparo, and I appreciate all the questions and comments that we have had. It was very informative, and I want everyone to know that we are working on it as an airport commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin.
And nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I would like to thank the team for their participation tonight. I hope people were, those who were in attendance were, if not totally satisfied with the answers, at least got their questions out there and addressed. We ask their continuing interest and patience as we move forward to this. We're breaking new ground, certainly from our perspective, and it's a difficult situation for everybody to work through. But thank you all, and thank you particularly to the Mass DEP people for joining us tonight. One had to leave for a dentist appointment, but Mr. Martin, Ms. Gallagher, thank you very much. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Topham. How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Topham? Ms. Topham, excuse me. You're muted. You're muted. Thank you. You vote aye? I couldn't hear you.
Aye.
Thank you very much.